as soon as I scratch my eye. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this week. My name is Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. As you are logging in today, please locate your control bar at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you're going to find the chat, the Q&A, and the live transcript options. I can see people hopping on already. Excellent. Welcome, everybody. All right, we are going to want you to chat with us today during this webinar. So if you could, as you are logging in, go to the chat icon and then go ahead from the drop down and select everyone. And just let us know where you are signing in from. And also let me know if this is your last week of school. I know for a lot of people, this might even be your last day of school. So if you are one of the lucky ones who is getting out of school today, let me know that in the chat. I always like to see how people are faring at this time of the year. The Q&A area on the control bar is for your questions. If you can put your questions in the chat too, it's just a little bit easier for us to see them if they are in the Q&A. And if you would like to take advantage of subtitles, you'll want to click on live transcript and then select show subtitles. So we are on Twitter, as we do every week. We encourage you to find us on Twitter, follow us, say hello, let everybody know that you're joining us for this conversation today. So Saddleback is on Twitter, and our presenters today are on Twitter. We have Emily Ropars and Adelicia Brienzo joining us, and I'm sure they would love it if you said hello, gave a quick little shout out on Twitter. All right, we'll get started right in about 2 minutes. So let's see who is here. Let me open up the chat. All right, we've got Memphis, Tennessee. Hello, welcome everyone. North Texas, Riverside, California. Hello, everyone. DC. Hello, Robert. Good to see you. Okay, whose school year is over this week? Anybody's? I'm here in Birdville. Hi, Birdville. I'm sure you're getting out this week, huh? You're in Texas. Oh, but you're working summer school, so you're not getting any time off yet. So, all right. Hello, Tracy. Welcome, welcome. As you continue to sign in, make sure that you go to the chat, select everyone, let us know where you're joining us from today. Let's say hi to our presenters. We have Emily and Adelicia with us. How are you, ladies? Where are you joining us from? Let everybody know where you're joining us from.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Ropars. I'm joining you from the suburbs of Chicago in Illinois, where it's rainy and kind of steamy.
Is that where you are too?
Hey. I'm Adelicia Brienzo. I am joining in again from the south suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see everybody.
So this is kind of a hot topic. We've done several webinars on the sort of silo situation when it comes to special education and multilingual learners. So I know people are always excited to get as much information as they can. So thank you very much for volunteering to come and share your expertise with us today. Hi, Kathy, welcome. Hello, Erica from Edmond, Oklahoma. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you. And I hope that somewhere in the back of your minds, everybody's starting to make summer plans. Hello, Amy. Thank you for joining us. All right, it is about time to get started. Our topic today is breaking down silos, special education and EL teams working together to support all learners. And to lead us in this conversation today, we have Adelicia Brienzo and Emily Ropars. Just a quick little introduction. Adelicia is one of the Illinois Resource Center's newest education specialists. Congratulations for that. And then she has over 15 years in the field of education. She's had positions such as teacher and dual language, primary, special education, program supervisor, administrator. So very well versed, and happy that you're here today. And Emily has been in the field of early childhood education for more than 20 years, and she has a special passion for inclusion of all children. And she's currently an inclusion specialist for Early Choices and president of the Illinois chapter of DEC. So welcome to both of you. Thank you so very much for coming to share information on this topic. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you, Liz. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right, is that working, everybody?
Looks good.
Thank you. Okay, we are also going to put into the chat the slides for today, along with some space for some notes for any of you who are note takers. as well as a link that has all of the information and a handout for you as well, so that you have all the links to the documents that we are referring to today. Again, as Liz said, my name is Adelicia Brienzo. I work with the Illinois Resource Center here in Illinois. We work with English learners across the state, and we support educators with professional development and technical assistance. My background, again, is primarily in early childhood, but I've worked a lot in bilingual classrooms, ESL classrooms. I've worked as an administrator and special education as well. So I do have that lens from kind of having been in both departments, in the bilingual department as well as the special education department. So welcome everybody. I'll let Emily kind of talk a little bit about herself before we get going.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining us today. We are very passionate about this topic, and we're so excited that you're here to join us today. Adelicia and I are colleagues and friends who have a shared passion for exploring these ideas. We're both very committed to inclusion and high quality practices for all kids, which you must be too, since you're spending time with us here today. So we see this as a conversation that we're getting started. We invite you to join us in the chat by sharing your own experiences, and already start thinking about who you can share this conversation with in your current role.
We'd love to hear who is here. So if you just recently joined us, please put your information in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, what your title is. If we have, we'd love to see if we have teachers or support staff, therapists, as well as the state that you're coming from. Hi, Carly. So glad you could join us today. Wonderful.
What I've noticed, Adelicia, we have folks from all over. I love it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. So also, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to do a waterfall activity. So don't press send yet, but we would like you to put into the chat what you're hoping to learn today. So we'll just give you 1 minute to think about what your goal is for our work together today and to type that up. And then don't press send just yet. And we will let you know, and we'll kind of see where everybody's at and what they're hoping to get out of the presentation today. Okay, go ahead and press send. Micah, so glad to see instructional assistants on the call with us today.
Adelicia, we have a sneak preview here. Tori says that they are interested in ideas to offer district SPED colleagues to persuade them that ongoing collaboration is a best practice, not an afterthought. Well, we second that.
Absolutely.
I love all these varied perspectives we have. We've got folks in all kinds of roles, so we're going to be able to hear so many different things.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, everybody. Really appreciate that.
Okay, so as we're getting started here, as I mentioned, we are definitely starting a conversation. We have 45 minutes together today. This is something that Adelicia and I talk about all the time. These are guidelines for multicultural practice that we've adapted from Monique Marshall, who's a fantastic resource for you. You can Google her later. But we want to kind of focus on those last two, that we're going to be approaching today's topic with a beginner's mind. We're going to kind of start fresh here and think about the information that Adelisa and I are sharing with you kind of with a beginner's mind. And then accept that non-closure. We're not going to be able to resolve everything today. We're going to kind of do a big picture and then go into some specifics, but it's going to be just a starting of a conversation today with us.
We also have a reflection document. Let me see if I can copy it into the chat.
You know what? It's in the chat, Alicia.
Oh, it's already in the chat. Wonderful.
It's already in there, yeah.
Excellent. Great. Okay, so wondering if we have any speech paths in the group today. Every SLP I've ever met loves WH questions, so this slide is for you, SLPs. We have 4 WH questions that we're hoping to talk about today. As Emily mentioned earlier, there's just so much to talk about when thinking about English learners that receive IEP services. This is what we want to cover in just this very short amount of time that we have together. We'd like to go over history and data around ELs with IEPs. We would like to talk a bit about exploring how intersectionality plays a role in our school environment and our interventions. We would like to have some discussion, a little bit of self-reflection around best practices towards supporting all learners. We'll talk about 4 components for breaking down silos between EL and SPED departments. We'll talk about some action steps you can take today toward building collaborative teams in your schools and your buildings. And when do teams need to work together? What does that frequency look like? And what does the timeline look like for collaboration? So I'm going to see if I can paste this into the chat. There's been some new information out that I wanted to share with you from OSEP. So you can take a look at that document. It's a great resource for you. But we want to talk a little bit about ELs with IEPs and who are they and how do we support them. So let's first think about the under-identification as well as the over-identification of English learners with disabilities. Typically, in districts with very small EL populations, you will see a lot of over-representation of ELs with IEPs. And typically that stems from a lack of understanding of culturally and linguistically diverse students and how to meet the needs of English learners. You'll also see underrepresentation. So that's kind of a, it's strange that you will see districts that within the state as well as within the nation that both over and under identify students, depending on where the district is located. A lot of times ELs are underrepresented in districts with larger EL populations. And again, that can stem from thinking about the MTSS process failing, not having a strong MTSS process, waiting too long, this mentality that you have to wait a certain period of time for English learners to acquire greater English proficiency before they can be eligible for IEP services. So again, myths such as that can create this underrepresentation of English learners with IEPs. Of course, it is a myth that children with disabilities cannot learn a second language. There have been so much research around the fact that children with disabilities are absolutely able and should be supported in a second language and in their native language as well. Another myth is that ELs should not receive IEP services, or again, that ELs need to wait a certain period of time before they've reached a certain level of English proficiency before they can receive IEP services. That is also a myth. And finally, I do want to mention that students that receive speech itinerant services. So I did see that we have some preschool teachers, we have some early childhood people on the call. If children are not enrolled in a preschool program, but they are receiving or are eligible for speech itinerant services, those students do need to be screened for English learner services, and they do need to be serviced if they are identified as an English learner.
So you've heard Adelise and I mention intersectionality, and we wanted to take a moment here to pause for you to let us know in the chat how deep your understanding of intersectionality is at this time before we watch a real quick clip of Kimberly Crenshaw, who has been the pioneer in identifying and explaining what intersectionality is. So if you could just drop in the chat, how deep is your understanding of intersectionality at this time? And it's okay if the answer is, I've never heard it before. All right, so we have a good range from just hearing about it for the first time, just learning about it, hearing it, very familiar, but it's not talked about, familiar. Okay, so we are all over the map, which is perfect for us to be here together today. Again, we did make a reflection tool that is in the chat if you'd like to download it, or if you just have any piece of paper or notebook that's close to you, we encourage you to kind of take notes as we move through today so that any big ideas, ahas, wonderings that come to your mind as we explore some of these ideas today, you can capture them and then have an opportunity to dig deeper into them, explore further. But a lot of what Adelise and I today are talking about is a mindset of really seeing children as a whole child who brings many identities with them into the classroom, and we need to honor and respect, celebrate, and teach from a strengths-based model of everything they bring. So I'm going to turn it over to the expert here, Kimberly Crenshaw, and hear a little brief clip about what it means.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between teachers and students, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identities. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit, it is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they've come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
So Ms. Crenshaw gave us a lot to think about there. I'm just going to actually be quiet for a few seconds here so you have an opportunity to just kind of jot some notes to yourself of what you heard. Okay, it's a big idea, so we just want to give you a chance to respond and reflect for a moment here, but it does really impact our conversation we are talking about today. So I'm going to hand over back to Adelicia to kind of continue the conversation about the relationship between our multiple identities and how schools can support.
So I have been an educator in the field for over 15 years. And in so many districts, I have seen these silos between the bilingual or ESL departments and SPED departments. And so these are some of the quotes and some of the phrases that I've heard in conversations between staff members. For example, I don't service him, he isn't SPED, he's EL, or there isn't time for extra services in her schedule. So there's not time for EL services, or there's not time for SPED services. We can't do both. I've heard EL and bilingual staff being told, just come and translate at the meeting. We just need you to translate. And so here's just some of the things I've heard over the years. And what I see as a common thread in all of these conversations is a lack of framework for collaboration between these teams. There has to be trust between staff. I've seen a lot of lack of trust or lack of vulnerability in asking questions and being able to freely express ideas. I've also seen a lot of competing priorities between departments. I've seen a lot of gatekeeping. It's just so important that everyone work together to complete the puzzle. Emily has a great analogy that I would love for her to share. I think it really puts everything into perspective.
Yeah, so when I think about building a successful team and a successful school experience for children, I like to think of a backpack that the child can bring a backpack, and it's all of our work together to collaboratively put all the strategies, tools, supports, whatever they need to be successful in that backpack, and let them bring it with them to wherever they would be with their other peers. So we really want to think about that portability of those services, but also that we want to focus it on supporting that individual child with the strategies that they need to be successful.
So I love analogies. I love a good analogy. And I also love coffee. So this was just natural for me to think about having a little coffee break and just taking a minute to put in the chat, how do you take your coffee? I am personally, I like my coffee black, but I like just a little bit of coffee with my sugar. So I would love just put in the chat how you take your coffee. Anyway, right, Belinda? Now I feel like I need to take a run to Starbucks. Almond milk cappuccino, great. Or tea, absolutely. So thanks for sharing, everybody. What if someone said to you, what if you went to a coffee house with your group of friends or colleagues, and someone said, hey, you're sitting at a table where you can only have cream, or you can only have sugar. You can't have both. Or, you know, your group, if you drink your coffee black, you have to sit at this table. Or if you are a tea drinker and you don't drink coffee, you have to sit at this table. It's so asinine to think about things that way, right? But what if you could only pick one aspect of your identity to be supported? That's what we're doing to kids when we're putting them in these silos and where we're not servicing the full student, right? When we label or categorize students, the result is that we silo our work. So just as we would never put in a coffee house how people took their coffee or what they needed for their coffee at a same table, we would want to just address what they need at each table at where they're sitting, right? So it's very, I thought this was a good analogy for our work. I love this quote. By moving the focus away from trying to pinpoint second language or disability reasons for the challenges, we can concentrate on creating a more enriched learning environment. I just want to take a moment. I'm going to read it one more time, but I just want you to take a moment to really think about this. By moving the focus away from trying to pinpoint second language or disability reasons for the challenges, we can then concentrate on creating a more enriched learning environment. So what is our goal? Well, our goal is that all of our teams, all of our specialists bring all of their knowledge, all of their expertise, all of their skill sets, all of their experience together to support all children the way that they need to be supported, right? So there's another great video that we would love to share with you. And this is Debbie Zacharian, and she's talking a little bit about over-identification.
Let me share with you a hypothetical example of one student who went through the evaluation process and kind of look at what does all this look like in play. So let's just hypothetically call the student Lee, who's from Beijing, okay? So she comes to a school district at age 5, she goes into a kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher sees that she cries a lot, doesn't seem to play well with other students, and doesn't seem to be attending to any of the learning tasks in the classroom. So she's very concerned, as the good teacher that she is, that Lee might have a disability, and she refers her. So they meet with Lee's parents, and at home, Lee's parents are concerned about Lee's behavior at home. So the school very quickly assumes that, well, Lee's having these problems at home, and she's having these problems at school. Let's go through the evaluation. She goes through the evaluation. She's tested in English. While she speaks almost solely in Mandarin, in fact, doesn't speak any English at all. And the school, in its best judgment, will use sort of nonverbal assessments to help figure out what Lee is all about. They observe her in the classroom, and they see indeed she is acting out, not able to attend to tasks. And very quickly, she's defined as a student with a profound disability and is taken out of the classroom and given special education interventions, almost exclusively spending the day outside of the classroom. There's one potential of outcome. So then let's take the same student, Lee, who comes in at 5. He's coming from Beijing, new to the school, but the teacher notices the same things and is quite concerned. And she brings her concerns to the child study team at her school. And the child study team, under the laws regarding IDEA, says, let's look at various things that we might do to help Lee participate more actively and appropriately in class. And let's do that first by meeting with her parents and just finding out a little bit about her background. So with an interpreter, they interview her parents, and they find out that Lee indeed was born in a rural community outside of Beijing, and that her parents, right after Lee was born, came to the United States to do their graduate studies, and they left Lee in the loving care of her grandparents, and she spent the first 5 years of her life with her grandparents. Now her parents are ready for her to come to the U.S. They live in an all-English-speaking community. They themselves have acquired English. They haven't had much opportunity in the way of parenting, and they welcome Lee into their home. And they decide that because they speak English, it would be in her best interest to be in an all-English speaking environment. So one of the reasons that Lee is crying and upset and not able to attend to any task is she's being surrounded very abruptly by people she doesn't know, her parents that she hasn't spent her first 5 years with. They're speaking in a language she's not familiar with, and she's in a classroom environment that doesn't speak Mandarin either. So with the help of the child study team, they decide to do various interventions before she's referred. First one is with the help of a translator, they work with her in the classroom to help her be more appropriate with her classmates, more aware of what's going on with the help of a translator, The school guidance counselor works with the parents about what might be helpful to do at home and how hearing Mandarin might be helpful, and just sort of general parenting because they don't have much background. They work with the classroom teacher. So all of these sort of ideas come into play around what might help Lee feel more like she's a member of the classroom. So if we look at the first scenario of what happened to Lee, she's identified as having a disability and taken out of the classroom. And at the end of the year, it's recommended that she repeat kindergarten again. In the second hypothetical case, Lee does quite well. And by the end of the school year, she's recommended to go on to first grade, and she's never been referred for a special education evaluation. So you can see how that concern around over-identification can occur when proper, appropriate interventions aren't applied and when they are applied.
I think that's such a powerful example, and it's an example that I've seen happen go both ways over the over a decade that I've been in working with ELs and working with students with disabilities. I think, again, what we highlighted here was her quote that the school study team says, let's find out a little bit about her background, do some investigation, learn about the child, learn about the background, learn about their family, because it can really make a difference in thinking about what supports need to be put into place for that student.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adelicia, that really curiosity is one of the greatest mindsets to have in our field as educators, getting curious about where someone's strengths are, what their family could share with us about the individual. We wanted to pause here to give you a moment to reflect again, jot down some notes to yourself about anything in that example that we just shared that you can relate to, any questions it raised for you, insights you have that you could bring back to a thought partner that you have back within the program where you work. And we have this reflection tool that you can download and print off if you would like, but a piece of paper works just as well. You'll see we have space there for some ahas about intersectionality, how it relates to your role and your work. And I'm just going to be quiet for a moment here to give you that opportunity. Linda raises a really great point in the chat. The issue tends to be the quote, who will have the task of data collection and intervention. And you're right, to be successful, we need to have support for best practices up at the level of systems where we have administrators who value teaming and collaboration and formal time to reflect and plan together so that these kind of conversations can be worked out without just trying to roll it into other day-to-day tasks that folks have. And so the real value here, and I think this was expressed very well in that video, and Adelicia and I love our metaphors, we love visuals, we're visual people. When you go to the eye doctor and they put that contraption in front of you and they say 1, 2, 2 or 3, and they go through all those, they line up all those lenses, eventually you get to a clear picture. And so one of the visuals we want to leave you with as you step out of this webinar in a little bit here into your regular role is, whose lens could I add to my thinking? Who could I partner with? What can I share with others that'll give us a better picture of what best practices will look like for English language learners and who also have disabilities. So we hope you keep this as one of your mental images of what we're thinking about today. In 2019, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, which is the professional organization for early childhood, came out with an equity statement. And regardless of whether you work in the early childhood field or not, this is a very powerful document. It is very clear in what our role is as educators in supporting equity in our classrooms. And you'll see here in the equity work, their last two recommendations are really highlighted in what we're talking about today. One is to provide time and space for learning communities. We need to get together to get those multiple lenses. We need to learn together. We need to dig into equitable practices together so we can build off each other's knowledge. And then we need to work collectively to challenge and change policies. So we invite you to think today, who could be a thought partner in your job right now to dig into this work? What is a space that you can create within your job? Maybe you could do a brown bag series where once a month you eat lunch with folks and just have a conversation about equity and how we can break down these silos. But regardless of what age group you work with, these key pieces really, really hold up.
So we wanted to establish this vision of what it could look like in your buildings or in your districts to break down these silos, but we also want to give you a few strategies and some tools that you can take today that you can bring back to your teams. And so the first thing is, how do you break down these silos? You build relationships, right? You build relationships. You, like Emily said earlier, you think about what thought partners can you bring on board that can you start to build communication pathways with, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of resources already out there in the field. We're just highlighting one that we've used a lot. Again, this is from the early childhood world. And this is from the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. They develop tools and strategies that folks can use to improve their practice. And this one in particular is a way you can do a self-assessment with your team about your collaboration skills for learning and growing together. So this will give you a framework and kind of a snapshot of how your team is functioning in terms of taking on work like this, in terms of stretching your thinking together, looking at program improvement together. So it's a good jumping off place. It's a neutral tool that you can use to start having conversations to think about your thinking together.
Oh yeah, I love this tool. This is just
I do too.
So
it's in
so
English
helpful.
and Spanish.
Love it. So one thing that I'd like to kind of talk about is some ways that we can build collaborative teams. So if you are already siloed in your department, what are some ways that you can begin making some connections with other departments? One of the first things I think about is PLCs and trying to make some time for both self-reflection, but also working together to have PLCs with people from different departments, right? Bringing in people in your SPED PLC to your ESL and bilingual PLCs, right? Or to your Gen Ed PLCs. Also having planning time. Like Emily said, there has to be some structures in frameworks around how you are going to be able to find time to collaborate, find time to plan together, review data together, take data together, determine who's going to take what kind of data, right? And how are you going to use that data together to guide instructional planning. Also, IEP meetings, so important that everybody on the team that works with that student is present and part of the IEP process, right? Including, of course, taking family input as well, right? The families are certainly part of that team, as are students that are 14 years old and older. as well as communication, right? How can you build communication between teams and families? One of the things that we have seen that works really well, and I do a lot of professional development around family engagement and how important it is that we do engage our families. I talk a lot about the differences between involvement and engagement. Involvement feeling more like a one-way street, where engagement is truly the family member, the families are part of the team, and it's really a two-way communication, right? So I would love for you just to take a moment to type into the chat what your thoughts are right now. Where do you think this work might fit in for you as well as for your program? So please feel free to share in the chat. Again, that's a space for you also to chat with your colleagues, share some of the experiences you had. Yes, Carly and Tori, absolutely. Again, that two-way communication, engaging families as partners in the work, as again was demonstrated by Debbie Zacharian's video as well. And training, absolutely, Robert. I agree, and that's something that we will talk a little bit in the next slide as well. But being able to participate in professional development opportunities together as a team will really help start to build some communication and to have some really rich collaborative discussions around students. So again, what are some things that you can do right now? First of all, again, going back to professional learning communities or PLCs, thinking about, do your SPED and EL teams have time together at all right now? Are they in any kind of PLC together? Are they in staff meetings together? Are they doing professional learning together on institute days? When do SPED and EL teams have time built into their schedule in which they can meet and can have conversations? If there is not a framework yet in your program, starting with just a conversation, like Emily said, just even having lunch together, right? Or just visiting somebody's classroom or visiting their office and saying hello, sharing a story about a student, just starting to open that dialogue. Planning together and finding time to plan a lesson together. Again, attending PDs or attending trainings together. If you have a great professional learning session that you are attending, inviting somebody from another department to come with you. And it really does open up a lot of great discussion. A walkthrough, so just asking somebody on another team if you could observe one of their sessions or observe one of their classrooms or observe some of their instruction. And then of course, IEP meetings and making sure that EL and SPED teams are collaborating around IEPs and everybody has a voice at the table. I think that it's important that true collaboration means that it does not occur without trust, without vulnerability, without the ability to freely share ideas and ask questions in a safe space, being able to understand and work with each other's strengths. This can only happen if you build relationships and strengthen rapport. It's kind of I always talk about the parallel process, right? That's what we do with students. That's how we build rapport with students and build trust with students. And it's the same thing with our colleagues as well. We all know that learning is so much harder when effective filters are working overtime, right? So I'm wondering if, again, you can share in the chat, what are some things that you're thinking that you can do in your programs? great, Tori. I love that. So inviting even your SPED colleagues to attend this webinar, right? And getting that dual certification, we need more people that have that dual certification in ESL or bilingual and SPED. So, Alan, yes, bring coffee. I love it. Food will bring people together every time. So we do need to keep moving. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get through our content and share some resources with you, but we will keep looking through the chat. I do love this quote, and I want to share it with you. I believe that to make genuine strides toward increased inclusion, you must find partners. None of us can do this work on our own. And I think that's so important to think, because as educators, oftentimes we can become kind of siloed ourselves, and we can kind of become isolated and try to get everything done on our own. And it's just so important that we remember that we have a team. We have people that we can work alongside, and together we can just do so much more. So again, we didn't have a whole lot of time, and this is a very, very big topic, but we did want to leave you with some research and some different resources in case you would like to kind of pursue some information on your own. There are some really nice links here for articles, some videos. Emily had shared the NACCE equity statement, a few of the points. This is the entire statement here. And then there's this wonderful book that one of my colleagues, Christina Sanchez-Lopez at the Illinois Resource Center, co-authored. So I definitely recommend that you look into that. And then we do have a feedback form we would love to share with you. We'll put it into the chat if you would like to give us any immediate feedback. Emily and I are always working to improve. And so we would love for you to take a few minutes to fill out that feedback form. And these are our email addresses. You're always welcome to email us with any questions as well. We would love to hear from you.
Okay. Looking at the chat still coming in. There's the link, everybody, to the form. And while you are filling that out and thinking about any last minute questions or thoughts that you have, I'm going to go ahead and take the screen share back and let everybody know who is coming up next week. Okay, so next week's webinar, we have Dr. Jill Watson joining us, and she's going to be discussing Indigenous educational practices for SLIFE classrooms in particular. Now, this is not a topic that we've covered in the past. We've been in hot pursuit of someone who can discuss this. So Jill has volunteered to come on and share her research in this area. I think it's going to be a very interesting perspective. So we encourage you to join us. You can sign up on our website, and also you will be receiving an email prompting you to register later on next week. So we hope to see you there. Don't forget to check out our latest decodable text for tweens. If you are a teacher and you have a 4th grader, 5th grader, 6th grader, all the way up to 8th grade, and those students need basic phonics skills, this is a great resource for you that is age respectful. So that way we don't have to use kindergarten books for our older learners who need those foundational phonics skills. So please, if you have questions about that, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to give you more information or send you some samples. All right, now that we have that taken care of, let's visit the chat one more time, and let's go to the Q&A. It looks like, oh, we already answered all the questions there in the Q&A as well. So perfect. All right. Well, you are so welcome, Brittany and Kathleen. And Carly, thanks so much for joining us. Carly's a friend of the webinar series. Carly, I'm going to have to give you a call. I'm going to need you to come on again, Carly. Oh, we've got another question, I think. Hold on. Jill says, one issue in appropriate identification of English learners with a suspected disability is understanding what is expected progress. It would be great to have some national data on this topic. Yeah, that would be great. I don't think there is like national data on that topic. So have you heard of anything like that around national data around expected progress? I don't know. I feel like maybe that's pretty individualized, and unless you're following specific like WIDA standards or something like that, I don't know that there would be anything like that.
I think it's also always good practice to, when you're looking at the progress of your ELs with IEPs, looking at same aged peers that are similar and that have similar backgrounds, that also have, they're also ELs with IEPs. So looking at your own population as well.
Yeah, a great research topic indeed for anyone who is looking for a PhD research area, right? All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you so much for your participation today. I hope we got everyone's questions. I think we did. It looks like we're pretty well cleared. If not, just go ahead and send me an email with your questions, and I'll make sure that I get it over to Adelicia and Emily for an answer. So I hope everybody has a great long weekend. Thank you to Adelicia and Emily for joining us today, and we hope to see everybody at next week's session. This is where you can find Saddleback on social media, and you can also, be old-fashioned and give us a call on the phone if you would like. We promise we'll answer as long as it's during business hours, and get back to you as soon as possible. And then just thank you so very much for everything you do. We know it's been a long school year, and you all deserve a nice long weekend to recharge. So thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. And thank you to our presenters once again, and we'll see everybody next week. Take care.